She was wearing my hoodie when she said it. Standing by the window, arms crossed, her face tilted just enough to avoid my eyes, and then flatly came the words. "Don't touch me like that anymore. It doesn't feel right." That sentence. It didn't land like a punch. It landed like fog, slow, cold, and everywhere at once. I didn't ask what like that meant. I didn't ask what did feel right. I just stood there with my fingers still midair, half an inch from her shoulder, like I was trying to remember how to be someone who mattered. I wish I could say I reacted with dignity, that I smiled sadly and nodded. But no, I froze. Like a malfunctioning robot with a broken instruction set. My hand dropped. My throat locked. And all I could manage to say was, okay. It wasn't okay. Nothing was. That was Tuesday. By Friday I was gone. Not with a bang. Not with a fight. Just absent. No long note. No suitcase in the hallway. No dramatic door slam. I just stopped showing up in every way that mattered. No forehead kisses. No drive-safe texts. No warm hands sneaking over to her side of the bed. She didn't ask where I'd gone. Because technically I was still there. Still in the house. Still doing the dishes. Still logging into work meetings. Still alive. Just vacant. At first she seemed relieved. She moved through the house like she owned the air again. Humming in the mornings. Singing while cooking. Taking long showers with the door locked. I counted the seconds once, 42 minutes. That's not a shower. That's a performance. I wanted to ask who the audience was. But I didn't. Instead, I started tracking something I shouldn't have, her silence. How long she'd go without speaking to me. How long between her fake goodnight and the moment she turned her back in bed. How many days before she touched me at all. 11. That's how many days it took before she accidentally brushed my hand while handing me the mail. And even then she said, "Oh sorry," like I was some stranger she bumped into in a grocery store. That's when I knew. I was no longer her husband. I was a lamp in the hallway. A calendar on the fridge. A misplaced object she hadn't figured out how to throw away yet. And when I finally started disappearing for real, staying out late, ignoring her texts, canceling our anniversary dinner without a word, something shifted. She noticed. She started hovering. Asking if I was okay. Sitting closer. Making my favorite dinner and pretending it was a coincidence. I said nothing. Ate in silence. Left my plate in the sink. She stopped humming. The next week, she cracked. It started with passive-aggressive questions. "Do you even want to be here? Why are you acting like I did something wrong?" And then full tilt. "Are you seeing someone? Is that it?" I didn't answer. Because she didn't deserve answers. Because she gave me silence when I begged for closeness. Because when I touched her with love, she pulled away like it was poison. So I gave her what she asked for. No touch. No warmth. No presence. Just absence. And when I tell you she lost her mind. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't pack a bag or make a scene. I just started subtracting myself from rooms, from conversations, from her. At first, I don't think she even registered the shift. People like her never do. They're too used to orbiting around themselves, assuming the quiet ones will always stay tethered. But when silence replaces affection, something strange happens. It echoes. It starts to creak and stretch until it becomes heavier than any argument. I stayed in the house, sure, but I became air. When she walked in a room, I walked out. When she asked me something across the table, I blinked slowly and kept chewing, pretending the question hadn't landed. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't angry. I was just void. She thought I was sulking. That it would pass. That I'd come crawling back like always, like the weak little husband who once cried over a burned casserole and apologized to her for making her feel bad. But this time was different. I wasn't sulking. I was detaching. She started testing me subtly at first. One night, she came into the living room in the oversized t-shirt she used to wear when we'd watch old movies together. She sat beside me just close enough that our elbows touched, then picked up the remote like nothing had happened. I didn't even look at her. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and scrolled through my phone in the dark. 5 minutes later, I heard her sigh and stomp off. The next morning, she made coffee for 2 again. I poured mine down the sink. I think that was the first time she got scared. Not furious, not annoyed, scared. Because that's when she started overcompensating. She began texting me during the day again. Sending me TikToks she thought were funny. One afternoon, she even sent a photo of the park bench where we had our first real conversation. It was captioned, "Remember this?" Of course I remembered it. I remembered how she used to doodle flowers on napkins while she talked. How she told me she had 3 backup dreams in case life didn't go her way. I remembered her laugh, the real one, not the tight, professional one she developed for networking events. But I didn't respond. Not to the picture. Not to anything. She tried harder. Suddenly, she was home earlier. She was cooking again, not pasta from a box, but full, elaborate meals with dishes she hadn't touched in years. She even played our old playlist while she chopped vegetables, swaying to it like we were still in that cramped first apartment with the squeaky floorboards. And when none of that worked, the panic began to show. I came home one night to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, crying. She didn't hear me come in. Her shoulders were shaking like she was trying to keep the sobs small. I just stood in the hallway watching, wondering when exactly the roles had reversed. When I became the one with power. She looked up and spotted me in the doorway. Her eyes lit up just a flicker like she thought I'd rush in and hold her. Instead, I turned off the hallway light and walked into the guest room. She didn't follow. The next morning, the silence was unbearable. Not because I missed her voice, I didn't. It was unbearable because I could feel her unraveling in it. Like she finally realized this wasn't a phase. That maybe I wasn't bluffing. That maybe I really had stopped chasing her approval. And then came the moment that nearly made me break. She touched me. Not dramatically. Not sexually. Just gently placed her hand on mine while I was pouring cereal. Her voice cracked when she said, "Can we talk?" I stared at her hand for a full 5 seconds. Then I moved mine away and walked out of the kitchen. That was the first time she screamed. It wasn't words. It wasn't begging. Just pure, guttural frustration, a noise I'd never heard come from her before. Like the reality hit her spine all at once. Like she finally understood what she'd done. But here's the worst part. That scream? It felt good. Because for the first time in years, she was the one feeling small. Uncertain. Hollow. And I, the soft-spoken, apologetic husband who once begged her to hold his hand in the grocery store, was the one watching her fall apart. And I wasn't finished. Not even close. She thought I was bluffing. Even after the scream, even after the silence, even after watching me slide into the guest room without flinching, she thought it was all a grand, pathetic attempt to win back her attention. That eventually I'd come crawling back like a kicked puppy, pawing at her door, whispering apologies for things I didn't even do. But I didn't. I stayed distant. Colder than she ever thought I could be. And that terrified her. Not because she missed me, but because she missed the version of herself she got to be when I was orbiting her like some grateful moon. She missed the mirror I used to be, the one that always reflected back love, even when she gave none. A week passed. Then came the night I heard her going through my laundry. It was late, maybe just after midnight. I was still up, sitting in the dark of the guest room, pretending to scroll on my phone, but mostly just listening to the creaks and sighs of a house that suddenly felt too big for two people who barely acknowledged each other. And then I heard it, the soft metallic click of the hamper lid in our bedroom. Then the unmistakable rustle of fabric. At first I thought maybe she was just cleaning. Some frantic attempt to restore normalcy. But then I heard her unzip the small duffel I always kept tucked behind the closet door, the one I hadn't touched in months. She was searching for something. Maybe she thought I was cheating. That would have been easier for her to accept than the truth that I was done. That I didn't need another woman to justify my emotional exit just the moment she recoiled from my touch like it disgusted her. That was all it took. She didn't find anything, of course. No receipts. No perfume. No hotel keys. No hidden burner phone. Just the same beat-up t-shirts I'd worn for years and a tangled pair of earbuds I never remembered to untangle. But when she came down the hall afterward, she didn't go back to our room. She stood outside the guest room door for a long time. I could hear her breathing. Like she wanted to knock or scream or maybe just ask, "Why aren't you breaking?" Eventually, I opened the door. She startled like she'd been caught doing something shameful, and in a way, she had. Not the laundry snooping, but everything before it. The slow withdrawal. The emotional starvation. The coldness. And now she was scrambling for evidence that the problem wasn't her. We stood there in silence, just feet apart, both in pajamas, both pretending this was a normal night. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I feel like I don't know you anymore." My first instinct was to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because the irony was just that thick. She didn't know me anymore because I'd stopped being useful. The moment I stopped being the eager-to-please husband, the emotional doormat, the man she could reject and still expect loyalty from, I became a stranger. And strangers don't stay. I didn't respond. I just stepped past her into the kitchen and opened the fridge. I wasn't even hungry. I just needed air. Something other than her perfume and her sudden crisis of self-awareness. She followed me, of course. "I mean it, Earl," she said. "You've changed." I kept staring into the fridge. watching the cold air swirl around jars of mustard and half a leftover sandwich. Finally, I answered, "You told me not to touch you, so I stopped." That shut her up. It's amazing how people think boundaries are reversible, that they can shove you away one day and demand closeness the next, like your emotions have a light switch they get to control. But I wasn't her switch anymore. I wasn't her anything. She hovered in the doorway for a while after that, probably expecting more. A lecture, a meltdown, a final desperate hug. She got none of it. Eventually she walked away, and I heard the bedroom door shut. Not slam, just shut. Like she didn't have the energy to fight, but she also couldn't admit she'd already lost. But the story doesn't end there, because the next morning, I found something that told me she wasn't done trying to drag me back. Not because she loved me, but because she needed to prove to herself that she still could. It was a note, left on the table beside my coffee mug. Folded once, perfectly centered, no name on the outside. I hesitated to open it, half expecting some empty apology or plea for attention. Instead, I read 8 words that flipped everything upside down. I never meant it. Please don't vanish yet. Too late. I didn't respond to the note. Not with words, not with gestures, not even with a passing glance in her direction. It sat there on the table next to my coffee mug like a faint echo of something that used to matter. Those 8 little words. I never meant it. Please don't vanish yet. Carried all the emotional weight of a tissue in the rain. Late. So late it was laughable. She had every opportunity to speak up before, to hold me, to meet my eyes when I begged without saying a word. But she'd chosen the cold path, the one where I was treated like a background extra in her curated little life. And now, after weeks of me fading like smoke, she wanted to backpedal? She didn't get to hit rewind. That evening, something shifted. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe guilt. Maybe the sudden realization that I had become unpredictable, and that scared her more than anything else. Because when someone like me, quiet, dependable, forgettable, stops following the pattern, people like her lose control. She started with the familiar. I was brushing my teeth when I noticed the music. Our playlist, the one we used to slow dance to in the kitchen, barefoot and drunk on cheap wine. I hadn't heard it in years. She must have dug through old files to find it. The melody drifted down the hall, soft and nostalgic like a trap. I spat into the sink, wiped my mouth and walked out. She was waiting in the living room, wearing the red dress. That dress. The one she wore on our 3rd anniversary when we got caught in the rain and laughed so hard she snorted wine through her nose. It clung to her just the way it used to. Hair done. Makeup light but intentional. Candles flickering across the coffee table like a scene staged for a movie. And for the first time in weeks, I actually felt something. But it wasn't what she wanted. It was anger. Not the yelling kind. Not the throw something against the wall kind. No, this was colder. It was the kind of anger that comes from knowing someone is playing a role, and doing it badly. She gave me a tight smile. I thought we could talk. I said nothing, just stared. And she tried again. I miss us. Still nothing. Then she stepped toward me, slow, deliberate, letting her fingers graze my arm. It was supposed to be seductive, familiar, but it landed like ice. I didn't flinch. I didn't even move. I just let her touch slide off me like rain on wax. You don't get to play wife now, I said quietly. She froze. Where was this when I needed you? I asked, my voice trembling. Not with sadness but with the restraint it took to keep from saying everything. Where was this when I stood behind you in the kitchen, and you recoiled like I was diseased? Her lips parted like she wanted to explain, maybe beg, but no words came. Just the same silence she once weaponized against me, now turned against her like a mirror. You thought I'd always be here, I added. That I'd keep waiting, that I'd keep crawling back every time you pushed me away. She blinked. Her eyes welled up. I didn't know how far gone you were. You didn't care. That landed. I saw it. The moment the truth dug into her chest and made itself at home. I was hurting too, she whispered. I just didn't know how to say it. You said it every time you looked through me. The music kept playing in the background. Some sad acoustic love song that once made us cry during a road trip. Now it felt like the soundtrack to a funeral. She took another step closer, placing her hand on my chest. I let it rest there for 1 second. Just one. Then I stepped back. "I'm sleeping in the guest room," I said, and left her standing there in her red dress, holding a flicker of hope that died the moment she opened her mouth and spoke too late. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Not sad. Not broken. Just empty. Until 2:13 a.m. That's when I heard the front door open. Then close. No footsteps followed. I got up, walked down the hall, and peeked through the blinds. Her car was gone. No note this time. No text. No clue where she went. But I had a feeling I was about to find out just how far she'd go to drag me back. And it wouldn't be romantic. It would be chaos. I didn't sleep after she left that night. I watched the digital clock blink past every hour, eyes fixed on the ceiling like it might drop answers on me. She hadn't taken her phone. Her purse was still in the hallway. She just left with her keys and vanished into the dark like some shattered version of herself. By morning, the bed in the master was still untouched, and there were no texts, no voicemails, no passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge. I brewed coffee like I normally did, set out 2 mugs by force of habit, then slid hers back into the cupboard the second I realized what I was doing. That used to sting. Now it just felt mechanical, like wiping dust off furniture that didn't belong to me anymore. I drove to work half expecting to find her car parked outside the house again by the time I came home. I didn't. Because she didn't wait that long. She came to my office. She showed up. I was in the middle of a client pitch meeting when our receptionist buzzed my desk and said, "There's someone here asking for you. Says it's personal. Won't take no for an answer." I felt my blood freeze. I already knew. I could feel her chaos vibrating through the building like a pressure wave. I excused myself, buttoned my jacket, and walked down the hall like I was heading to defuse a bomb. And in a way, I was. There she stood. In the waiting area. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Hoodie and jeans. Like she was trying to cosplay vulnerability. Her eyes were wild, red-rimmed, scanning every corner of the room as if she was being hunted. And then they locked on me. She stood immediately. "Oh, we need to talk." I didn't say anything. I just gave the receptionist a polite nod and gestured toward the hallway. She followed me in silence until we were far enough from ears. And then she unleashed. It started quiet, like she was trying to maintain control. She asked why I was doing this. Why I was making her feel like a stranger. Why I wouldn't give her a chance to explain. But it didn't take long before the cracks formed and her voice began to rise. "You're punishing me for something I didn't mean," she hissed. "You've made your point, oh? But enough is enough." People turned in nearby cubicles. I stepped closer and lowered my voice, trying not to make a scene. "You don't get to decide when it's enough. Not anymore." That hit her. I could see her jaw clench. "I never cheated on you," she snapped. "If that's what this is all about. I know you saw the messages. I know you've been snooping." I blinked. I never mentioned messages. Her lips parted. And in that tiny fraction of a second I saw it. Panic. Raw and naked. I'd never even brought it up. I had suspected something. I'd seen that flirty message weeks ago, sure, but I buried it beneath silence. Now she had given herself away. I stepped back, letting the implication settle between us like smoke. "What else haven't I found yet?" She went pale. "That's not what I meant." "I was disappearing," I said slowly, "but you were already gone." The fury returned instantly. Her voice cracked. "I was lonely, Earl. You shut down. You stopped caring." "No," I replied, keeping my voice even. "I stopped pleading. There's a difference." She looked like she wanted to hit something or cry or both. Instead, she turned and stormed down the hallway, brushing past interns and clients like a storm no one saw coming. She didn't even wait for the elevator. She took the stairs, 2 at a time, like she was sprinting away from guilt itself. I stood there, staring after her, heart pounding so hard it felt like I could hear it in my teeth. She had just confirmed what I'd feared for weeks. She wasn't just cold. She wasn't just distant. She was hiding something. And now, in her desperation to claw her way back into control, she'd shown her hand. But it didn't end there. When I got home that night, there was a new note. Not handwritten. Typed. Left on the kitchen counter like it was a business memo. It had no greeting, no closing. Just one line. "If you leave me, I will ruin everything you care about." And right next to it was her wedding ring. Not in a box. Not tucked away in guilt. Just sitting there. Alone. Like bait. I stared at the ring for what must have been 15 minutes. I didn't sit down. I didn't touch it. Just stood over the kitchen counter with the fridge humming behind me and that little circle of gold mocking everything I used to believe in. I wasn't angry. That was the strange part. I thought I should have been furious, betrayed, devastated. But all I felt was clarity. A cold, clinical understanding that the person I married no longer existed and maybe hadn't for years. But that note? That threat? That wasn't desperation anymore. That was war. If you leave me, I will ruin everything you care about. Not even signed. No explanation. No apology. Just typed, printed, and left like a weapon she wanted me to find. Like it was supposed to scare me into crawling back. Like it would reassert her power. She didn't realize the version of me who used to be afraid was already gone. That man was buried somewhere in the nights I slept alone while she laughed at her phone. In the mornings she turned her back before I even opened my eyes. You can't threaten a man who's already lost the one thing he was afraid of losing, the illusion. Still, I wasn't stupid. I knew she wasn't bluffing about the destruction part. She was unpredictable, emotionally volatile, and dangerously clever when backed into a corner. So I didn't storm over to her friend's place, which is where I guessed she was hiding, and demand answers. I didn't text or call. I did something that would make her really nervous. I said nothing. The silence was surgical. I went to work like usual. Came home on time. Ate quietly. Left my wedding ring on the edge of the bathroom sink where she used to keep hers. And I started documenting everything. I made copies of every important file, backed up financials, changed passwords, pulled credit reports, and reached out to a lawyer I once met through a friend who handled messy emotional litigation as his specialty. His first words after I described the situation? She's already started playing chess. Don't bring a checkers strategy to this. We met the next day. He advised me to be calm. Calculated. You have to make her feel like she's still winning until she's not. It felt dirty. Manipulative. But honestly, it was exactly what I needed. I'd been at her mercy for years, trying to soothe storms she wouldn't name, trying to prove my love to someone who treated it like wallpaper. Now I had a plan. And the first step was letting her show her real face. I knew she'd return eventually. People like her always come back to see if the bomb they dropped did the damage they hoped for. She came back 3 nights later. I heard her car pull in just past midnight. Headlights swept across the living room. The front door opened quietly like she didn't want to wake a sleeping husband, except she knew I wasn't asleep. She wanted drama. She was feeding on it now. She walked in wearing the same hoodie she'd left in, eyes ringed with exhaustion and something darker. Her voice was calm. Measured. I thought maybe we could talk. I stayed seated on the couch, phone in hand, screen dimmed. You left a thread on the kitchen table. What part of that do you want to talk about? Her mouth twitched. Just a flicker. You backed me into a corner, Ol. I said something stupid. I was scared. No. You were cornered by your own choices. And you lashed out. She stepped further into the room. Are you recording this? I looked her right in the eyes. Should I be? That stopped her. Her eyes scanned the room like she expected to find microphones. Her voice turned bitter. You really think I'm the villain here? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Then she tried another tactic, the one she always used when logic stopped working. She cried. She sank into the chair opposite me, buried her face in her hands, and cried those soft, deliberate sobs designed to trigger guilt. And for a second, just a second, I felt that old reflex stir in me. The urge to comfort. To reach out. To tell her it would be okay. But it wouldn't be. She looked up, mascara smudged, voice barely above a whisper. I don't know who I am without you. And that was it. That was the moment I knew the game had flipped. She wasn't in control anymore. She was unraveling. And the version of me she used to hold by the throat was gone, replaced by someone she couldn't manipulate, couldn't guilt, couldn't own. I stood up and walked toward the hallway. I know exactly who I am without you, I said. And I shut the door to the guest room behind me. That night, she didn't sleep. I could hear her pacing the floors. Opening and closing cabinets. Crying again. Talking to someone on the phone in hushed tones. But I slept like a rock. Because the next morning I was meeting the one person who could help me finally break free. Her sister. And she had her own story to tell. The last time I sat across from Valerie, Maribel's older sister, we were sipping warm wine at a Thanksgiving dinner, pretending our family wasn't a glacier barely held together by casseroles and dry turkey. Valerie had always been the quiet one, sharper than people gave her credit for. Observant. Always watching with that half-knowing, half-exhausted expression like she was 10 steps ahead but too tired to care. She called me 2 days after Maribel came back home, but I hadn't picked up. I was wary of everyone. I didn't know if she was reaching out as family or as defense counsel. But when she texted, "We need to talk." Alone. "She'll never tell you what I know," I responded in under a minute. We met at a small cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asks questions and the chairs wobble slightly when you shift your weight. Valerie was already there, seated in the back, coat still on, hands wrapped around a chipped mug like it held something more serious than coffee. She didn't greet me. No small talk. No, have you been? She just looked at me and said, how bad has it gotten? I gave her a tired smile. She left a typed note on the kitchen counter threatening to ruin my life. She closed her eyes, breathed out slowly. So, she's escalated. That word. Escalated. It rattled something inside me. Valerie, I asked, voice quiet, what are you not telling me? She hesitated. Then she looked around the cafe like she needed to make absolutely sure no one would hear what she was about to say. You remember that work retreat she went on 2 summers ago? The one that got extended last minute because of the delayed flight. I nodded. I remembered because I'd been the one to rearrange my entire schedule to pick her up only for her to text last minute, don't bother. We're staying an extra night. Team dinner. Love you. Valerie tapped the side of her mug. She wasn't at a hotel with coworkers, Earl. She was in a lake house 2 hours north. With someone named Jonah. That name. It didn't register. It didn't sting. It just landed, heavy and cold. I stared at her. Who the hell is Jonah? He was one of her clients. Financial consulting, supposedly. She met him at some conference in Denver. They kept things quiet, but I saw the messages. She got careless one weekend, left her iPad at my place. I only saw them because she asked me to charge it and a notification popped up. I wasn't looking for anything, but what I saw wasn't business. My stomach twisted, but I didn't interrupt. She promised it was a one-time mistake. She cried. She begged. Said she was drunk, confused, that you weren't being attentive, all the usual garbage. I told her to come clean or I would. She swore she would. Gave me some long speech about protecting you from pain. And then, instead of coming clean, she buried it. Buried you. Treated you colder and colder until you started blaming yourself. I leaned back, eyes locked on the worn wood of the table. So all of this, it started long before the night she recoiled from me. Valerie nodded. Long before. She just wanted to rewrite the story so you'd feel like you were the reason everything broke. I didn't know what to say. There wasn't some dramatic rush of heartbreak. There was just silence. Thick, weighted, final. Like standing in a burned house and realizing you'd been living inside it long after the fire had stopped. I didn't tell you then because I thought maybe she'd fix it, Valerie said, her voice low. But she didn't. She just doubled down on the performance. And now she's spiraling. She can't control you anymore, and people like her don't survive that kind of shift. I looked up at her. Why are you telling me this now? She held my gaze. Because you deserve to stop questioning your sanity. And because she's about to make a move, and I think it's going to be ugly. Valerie slid something across the table. A flash drive. She didn't explain what was on it. She didn't need to. I didn't ask. I just pocketed it and paid for her coffee. On the drive home, my hands were cold on the steering wheel. Not from the weather. From the finality. From the realization that there was no version of the truth where Maribel could talk her way out of this anymore. No dinner dress. No playlist. No note. When I got home, she was on the couch. Legs tucked under her, hair pulled up, reading a book she hadn't touched in years. She looked up at me with that tight smile she used when she was pretending to be emotionally available. Hey, you okay? She asked like I hadn't just been handed the obituary for our entire marriage. I walked past her. Straight to the guest room. And I locked the door. Because now I had something she didn't expect. The truth. And tomorrow I was going to use it. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of anxiety, that was gone now, but because I was finally seeing the shape of the truth with no distortion. I lay on the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling like I had so many nights before, but this time the silence didn't feel suffocating. It felt earned. Peaceful. Real. The flash drive Valerie gave me sat on the nightstand, untouched, but I already knew what was on it. Screenshots. Messages. Evidence of a version of Maribel that no playlist or red dress could erase. It wasn't about revenge. I didn't want to destroy her. I just wanted to stop being her casualty. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. She was already awake when I walked into the kitchen. Sitting at the table, sipping her coffee slowly like she had no idea what was coming. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she thought this would be another day of tension, of power games, of waiting to see if I would finally break. Instead, I sat across from her and placed a single envelope on the table. What's this? She asked, voice wary. My goodbye, I said. Inside was everything, a signed separation agreement with copies of all financial documentation, keys to the house, and a letter. Not a cruel one. Just a truth teller. A few handwritten pages explaining how I had loved her, how I had fought for her, how I had waited longer than anyone should ever wait to be seen. And then, most importantly, how I was finally setting myself free. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. "You're leaving." "I already left," I said. "This is just the paperwork." For the first time, she looked afraid, not angry, not manipulative, just truly, purely afraid. "You don't have to do this." I stood slowly, calm, quiet. "I know. That's why I am." And I walked out the front door for the last time into the morning sun. No drama. No screaming. Just air. Clean, open, waiting. I didn't go far at first. Rented a small apartment near the river. Started walking in the evenings. Listening to music I liked instead of what she preferred. I joined a book club, ridiculous, I know, but I met some good people. People who asked questions and actually waited for the answers. I even adopted a dog. His name's Murphy. He's a mess. So am I. But he doesn't flinch when I reach out. Valerie and I still talk. Sometimes we laugh about things we never should have found funny. I think she's healing too, in her own quiet way. As for Maribel, I don't know where she is now. I don't ask. I don't check. Because my story with her ended the moment I stopped trying to be the person she wanted and started becoming the one I needed. I didn't burn the house down. I just stopped living in it. And now I'm building something better. Brick by brick. Quietly. Steadily. With people who want to stay. So if you're reading this and you feel like you're invisible in your own home, like you're holding your breath hoping they'll turn around and see you, just know this. You deserve more than their silence. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is leave.